Team 여러분, Tony입니다. Good morning, everyone. It's Tony. So, pulling off of the last three tracks that we reacted to, Fly to My Room, Blue and Gray, as well as Skit, we are now finishing off the BTS B album reactions with Telepathy, Disease, as well as Stay. So these are the last three songs that we're going to be reacting to off of BTS's B, because we have already reacted to Life Goes On, the music video, and if you want to go check that out, I'll leave everything linked in the BTS playlist down in the description box below, as well as Dynamite, obviously. So hopefully you guys are ready for this, because I am certainly ready for this, and without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start off with BTS's Telepathy and continue off of there, and there will be timestamps for you guys. Junbi, ready, she check! Alrighty, so now this is going to be Telepathy. Ooh, a bit like more ominous, kind of like... Oh, well, definitely very retro 70s rap. It's having a lot of emphasis on the like old school piano. Really kind of like almost rocker vibe as. Disco club? Disco club vibes? Okay. So like this is kind of coming towards the end of the album, and we do know that Dynamite is the last song, so this kind of like lines up a bit more with like the vibe that Dynamite gives, a bit more like retro 70s neon lights in the sky. But in contrast to Dynamite, Dynamite's more of like the daytime. This feels like more of like a nighttime type of beat, like very different. So like if you think about Skit, it makes now a lot of sense, because Skit is kind of like that breaker, that like good, that like spot where you start to transition. Hey. Showing off of diversity. Ooh, this V? Yeah, it's V. Okay. There's a lot more. So like in contrast to the first three songs, there's a lot more kind of like vocal playing, a lot more like EDM, almost like just auto-tuning kind of like the voices, which in a way works a lot really well in the favor of this song. It's really cool, very funky. It doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard before. Not it. Almost has like kind of like a bit of like an islandy vibe too. It's interesting. I like the overall beat. It's unique in itself. Oh, it's slow. Oh, that was a cool like transition. Oh, we get a slower part. Okay, okay, okay. One thing that you hear a lot in this album is that like the layering of over top of voices. So there's like a deeper voice in the background of this voice, and it just like is the same thing with a lot of their other songs, and it just accentuates and kind of like really highlights and brings to the forefront whoever is the main vocalist singing at this point. I believe it's Jungkook in this case. And we come back to this like wow. Yeah, there's like a transition like wow. That's like a cool like funky beat to bring it back into like the more funky groove that has like the verses here. Okay. I heard it's RM. All right. Ooh, I really like the like distortion that they have, like that like really creates a cool clean transition into this next portion of the song. Oh. Jimin in the background with the high. I think it's Jimin. It could be possibly Jin, but it sounds a lot like maybe a Jimin Jin. Very nice high note in the background. It's very like subtle, but you still notice it because it's the same chorus, and adding that on top of it just really highlights it, even though it's in the background. I find this is a fun beat. Like wow, I like these funky beats that they're including. These like subtle little vocals now. Oh, I like it. It's like a cool like retro fadeaway too. This is like how they used to fade away the song in the old, like before. Definitely a different song. I think that Skit was a good transition into this because you went from something that was like very kind of like more emotional, sentimental with like Life Goes On, Fly to My Room, Blue and Gray, and then you go into Skit, which is a bit more comedic, a bit comedic relief, lightens everything up, and it's a good transition into going from like emotional to now kind of like very upbeat and vibrant, leading into what is going to be the end at Dynamite. So overall, Telepathy does a really good job of bringing in this new funky beat, showing a different side to BTS in contrast to the beginning songs. So really enjoyed it and really like the progression so far throughout the album. So that was Telepathy, and now this is going to be Dis-Ease. I believe it's a play on words here. It's not going to say disease, but maybe a diss track of some sort. I'm not sure. So we're staying with the funky beat. Electric guitar 2.0. It really does feel like that, like a retro TV show. Like if there was a music video for this, there'd be somebody like maybe lounging off the pool, and you start off with like the radio playing, and then just like, you know, that's kind of like the vibe I'm getting here. This is more of a J-Hope song, I think. It has like a bit of like a unique synthy vibe in the background. Oh. Oh, the piano really plays a nice part in transitioning the song here. Yeah, right there when it comes into, I would assume, Jungkook, you have the piano hit the start. It's like an old kind of like it's like a similar piano vibe to what we hear in Fly to My Room. It's definitely a bit different, but it's definitely similar at least a bit. Then we have like the snapping of fingers. Two for the show. Hey! It definitely, like, I now understand why it says Dis-Ease. It feels a bit like the vibe of like a diss track at some point. It has kind of like that rapper flowy vibe that you would get from like the Backstreet diss track vibes. And I definitely understand what they mean now with that play on words. And it's a very cool take because it's still very upbeat tempo, and it's still leading us towards that vibe of Dynamite that we get at the end. It follows very well with Telepathy. It's definitely a different vibe, but it definitely has more of that like kind of gangster-ish vibe in this beat overall. It's still there's a lot of like playfulness here. Ooh, RM here. Are you ill? You never liked him? Yeah, okay, so I think perfectly having RM here, and I think I'm expecting Suga to do something similar. It really is like a spotlight for these guys, the rappers of the groups. Like J-Hope opened up. It's a very kind of like free, chillax kind of vibe, and I think that his voice in particular really suited that part. Here now, when we're getting into more of like the actual kind of more portion of like the actual diss track kind of, it makes a lot of sense to have RM here. He's kind of like a bit of like attacking it. It feels much more of like the actual diss track portion of a song. Okay, so we're going RM off of sugar. Okay. I don't know. Oh, what's the transition? Oh, it's like ooh. That's kind of like reminiscent of also like the times that they're going for, like the era. It wasn't like a smooth transition. It would kind of go ooh. I like that. Really like that. That small detail. Ooh, Jimin's voice in here really brings something different. The show. This portion in particular sounds more Western. I think that this overall was very heavily influenced like Western style music because of just like obviously the take on the diss track and everything, but this portion in particular really reminds me of like a Western influence. Ooh. They really accentuated the kind of like drums here. It's like sick and tired. Like it really feels like a different set of a song now. It's like a few different types of song, like a few different styles of music almost at this point that they're mixing in this one song. But they all seem to work and transition really well into one another, which is a big props to them. Walk it. Ooh, these vocals at the end. Wow. Wait, who's doing that high note at the very back? So there's another person that just took over that high note. Wow, it's so long? Holy cow. Who did that? I would have to assume it's Jin. It's really fun. Like, I don't know, it just feels like almost like a rocky kind of scene when it came into this portion of the chorus, like this part of the song over like around after the 2-minute mark. It felt like very kind of like anthem-esque, like pump you up for like a basketball match or something. That's kind of like the vibe I'm getting here. Really different but very cool. Maybe it's the trumpets, possibly the trumpets. Then we come back to like the chill, to like dissipate into like the radio vibe. Definitely a cool and kind of like pump up song, I would say. It starts off very quiet, very slow, and then it gets into like this diss tracky portion of the song, and then it goes into like a motivational kind of like pump up anthem song, I would say. It's a different variety. There's a lot of musical styles, I would say, and different musical beats in this overall song, but they really made a very good like effort to like mesh them all together. They succeeded, obviously, and I think that it really came out very well. This was obviously a very cool and trying to think like experimental beat for BTS in general with this track in mind, with the whole album in mind, actually. Okay, so this is the last track before Dynamite, which is the last track on the album, titled Stay. Ooh. Are we going slower, maybe? I like the opening. It's a unique set of instruments. It's almost like a xylophone. I think it's maybe a xylophone. Ooh. Oh, I vibe with this. I vibe with this opening right off the bat. Oh, the guitar just picked up and it's like really picking up pace now. So they're really like layering song music instruments on top of one another. We have like the xylophone, and then you have like one, I think, guitar or something, and then another one, picking up pace, and then there's coming to like an explosion, I'm imagining. It feels very nostalgic, almost like a kind of like 70s, 80s-esque retro song in the nighttime, kind of like club-y vibes like you would get at that point. Kind of, it feels very much like that. If anything, I feel like this song in particular is the most like mainstream K-pop you would get from this entire album. It feels the least kind of like it feels the most modern, but the least kind of like retro-y. But at the same time, it still has aspects of this like older style that they're going for this overall album. So I think it still fits in perfectly. It shows a different diversity. Oh, that stay was interesting. Yeah, definitely. It feels like an EDM like club vibe we're picking up. Oh. Put your hands up. You always stay. Ooh, the vocals are smooth too. Yo, honestly, I really am curious as to who helped produce this song. I would feel maybe Steve Aoki, because they've worked with him in the past and he is kind of like a big DJ, kind of like music producer, and I feel like maybe he had a hand in making this more kind of like modern feeling song. I'd be very interested to know though. It's definitely a fun song. I honestly think that Stay is a highlight. Like obviously all the songs of this album are a highlight, but Stay in particular, for the last 3 that we've listened to, I think it's really nice. It really stands out. Maybe it's just because I like this type of vibe music. Wow. This song definitely has a lot more RM than usual, and I think it really fits this entire vibe that we're going for. It makes a lot of sense to have him in particular here. And the smooth vocals, the really nice clean vocals. You are where we go, you are. I like it. I like the pre-chorus is so cool, because you would think it's like, I know you always are, and then you think that's like going right in, but it's like stay, and then we're coming back to RM, and then we're going into it. So it seizes the moment to like kind of make you wait even more. It makes the anticipation for the drop all that better. Here we go. Always. Oh, this is a really fun song. I really like it. You always say. It's really slick. It's very well done. It's like in a lot of cases, electric EDM, kind of like house type of songs can go very awry, and here they did it very masterfully. I really am curious as to who helped them with this song, because it has that professionalism that you would hear. The piano's coming back in more as an emphasis here at the end. The vocals are insane from this part. Like, you don't really recognize it. Wow, the piano. Like, you don't really recognize it, but the vocals were really nice in here. They hit a lot of high notes, sustained high notes at that. but like I think that the fact is that like they go so well somehow with this like EDM house vibe, and you wouldn't expect that, but there's a sense of like retro-esque, like older night vibe-esque feels to the song, which I think helps and lends itself more to these vocals that they are pushing out there. So I really overall really really like this song. Stay is definitely up there for me, and it's definitely a good way to lead off of into Dynamite, which is the last track. And actually, I think maybe even better, it would have been cool to have Dynamite before this because it makes sense in the timeline of like the retro feel, and then finish off, come back to like modern times with Stay. But you know, that's beside the point. I still think that the overall like timeline for this album is great. I overall think it's amazing, and yeah, that's all I have to really say about it. 안녕하세요 여러분, Tony입니다. Hello everyone, it's Editor Tony here. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video so far, and I thank you so much if you've been watching up until this point. Again, I cannot say enough how much I really do appreciate the BTS guys for releasing so much music, such great music at that, and I cannot wait to see what they do as more of a performances and how well they do for the rest of this year. And this has just been a great treat to react to the entire BTS B album and everything so far. So hopefully you guys did enjoy, and as mentioned, if you want to go check out any of my other BTS reactions, I'll leave them all linked in the BTS playlist down in the description box below. Hopefully you guys do give them a check out, and I would greatly appreciate it. But with that being said, guys, hopefully I see you in the next video, and until then, this has been Tony. 안녕히 계세요. Goodbye, and I'll see you later. Like